There we go. Maybe it's coming through. It has been a while. Good to be with you. And yeah, sorry for any noise you're getting. My noise canceling software killed off right before I went to hit my microphone. So that's just awesome. Well, welcome everybody. Good to have you here. If you are here, this is pretty impromptu, so most likely people will just be watching recording after the fact, which is absolutely fine. But if you are here, go ahead and let me know in the chat and maybe where you're from and that sort of thing, or just in the comments after the fact. Let me know where you're from. It'd be great. It's always one of the coolest things about this book. Let me just say this up front is that it reached out to an international audience that I did not expect. One of the things I'm going to try and do in the course of all this today, I want to look at, I'll be honest with you, I don't know how many books have actually sold. There's no way for me to tell that just because there are, I think, 5 different distribution channels just for the book, which is a little crazy, but yeah, it's something I'm going to try and improve in the future. But for now, it didn't really seem like a priority at the time, and so I was just kind of making it up as I went along. Actually, I will say that this book was really just foundational on how to do this in general, and so basically learning how to do distribution on Amazon, distribution through a service called Lulu. And Lulu was actually the one that helped me get into a lot of international places that Amazon wasn't. I think the biggest ones were Mexico, New Zealand, Australia, and I think there was like India and places like that too. And so that was a big deal. But Amazon, honestly, it's wild. The one of the biggest markets for that, and yeah. Greetings. Good to have you with us from Mexico. Awesome. One of the things about that was really awesome was that I think it was mostly the Dutch, I'll be honest with you, but Germany is one of the biggest markets. So I think it was like US, Britain, or just UK in general. I think I don't know if how the Amazon store works there, if it's different for individual company or countries, but UK is different. And then Germany is is kind of, I think, the Amazon store that serves a couple of different folks in that region, but that are in the EU. But I'm not really positive how all that works, to be honest with you. But that's the cool thing about a lot of these services is I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to ship books there and have them there. The drawback is we never did figure out an effective way to have like signed copies of Be a Citrix Hero elsewhere. Now, I did figure out with the second book, Just Do This, a way to kind of sign it on the hardcovers. And so going forward, that might be something I offer as a way to kind of personalize the books. I'll, it's not literally me signing it; it's my signature along with some personal messages that I put in the book, and so it's just kind of like a cool little collector item there. So for the next edition of Be a Citrix Hero, I might consider that. But uh, in any case, yeah, I think it was. What am I trying to say here? Yeah, just good for the time, and learned a lot. And so now I think it's a good time to start thinking about, okay, how can we update this again? Um, but yeah, maybe just a little bit of history with this. Actually, the whole Citrix Hero process started way back in 2016, and what I was noticing back then, and kind of a commitment that I had made uh, to myself, actually, yeah. Oh, hey, somebody from the Control Up community. Awesome. Greetings. Good to have you with us. Always love my folks from Control Up. So I was decided to start a blog called ctxpro.com. And the idea was to, and actually, let me go back a second. I think if memory serves, I did not start that one right away. I was actually just blogging on my um, personal site, and so I was just doing Citrix stuff because that's really what I knew the most of, and so I was just combining and things like that. And it started to not make sense, and so that's why I spun out uh, the CTX Pro blog. Hey, yeah, that's awesome. You came up all the way from Mexico to Atlanta. It's awesome. And you know, this is something that I find a lot with folks. Um, if you ever see me at a conference or whatever, say hello. It's okay. It's really not. I know it's kind of unusual, but definitely do say hello. It's absolutely fine. You know, I'm not one of those people that. Now I'm also kind of what I call a shy extrovert, and so I'll have like about maybe 2 hours worth of me being smiley and outgoing. And so the rest of the time, I have what my wife has come to call resting Deej face, which is kind of like me looking kind of like not like I'm smiling, even though I think I am smiling. So I think I'm smiling at people, and I actually just like, and it kind of naturally frowns frown. And so it's like if you ever see me at a conference and stuff like that, it's more that I've kind of reached my limit of what I can do as far as like introducing myself to people. But it's funny whenever somebody comes up and says hi, usually that snaps me out of it and I can interact and all that kind of stuff. But usually I don't go looking for conversations. I'm I literally am thinking of writing a book sometime called Shy Extrovert, just because that's the thing there. So, uh, but the before any of that, it was kind of one of those things where I had this notion of I don't want to just have my knowledge just sit with me alone. And so, with me out there doing consulting in the field, I was working with Citrix at the time, and so they were and I wasn't an employee of Citrix. Don't mishear me. I was a contractor with Citrix, but they just kept sending me out. They even though I was never a Citrix employee, they sent me out in the field for 12 years, representing them to customers. It's kind of wild. I've often wondered if I should have just joined, but it was, um, yeah, there's complications with that. But just that's the life of an independent contractor sometimes. So, but ultimately, it's worked out just fine. But the thing was, I was like, well, I only am imparting my knowledge to like one customer, maybe 1 to 3 people that are there at a time, and that just seemed wrong to me. It's just like there's more to here. And so I had started doing some blogging and that sort of thing, but really just wasn't resonating with me. Even though I am a writer and all that, the blog itself just wasn't really doing it for me. I think there's a lot of other people that were doing blogs that were way more active, and I was like, I just kind of felt like, you know what, I think this has got it covered. And so, right around 2017, 2017, maybe 2018, something like that. I was asked to join the Citrix Technology Advocates, and so I did. And one of the things that I started doing there was a lot more uh, presentations, a lot more speaking appearances at Synergy, like was mentioned there, and a lot of things like that that were giving back in a way that I just was blown away by. I was like, I just was in awe if this was possible. But one of the things that I was doing at the time was a presentation called the Dirty Dozen. And this is something that, by the way, I have full intentions to revive. Just kind of doing an updated version of the Dirty Dozen, but it was like the 12 things that I see people doing worst. But the difference is yeah, yeah, Chris. Uh, we remember those days. Crazy times. Yeah, and then the lunch table, the round tables. I was actually just looking at photos from that, just literally yesterday. I was going through, I was like, I had forgotten about my Instagram account. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I had forgotten about it, and there's a bunch of photos from Synergy. I think it was, the last one, 2019. Yeah, and so, yeah, we were doing those round tables at lunch and things like that. It was a lot of fun. Um, but I think one of the things that I noticed though was that these um, I don't know how to say this the nicest. I'm going to say this the nicest way I can. I don't want to offend anybody. It's not my intention. But what I was noticing was that a lot of the blog articles and things like that that were out there were from a very kind of myopic viewpoint. Like they weren't really considering the wider scope of Citrix customers. A lot of times, actually, in fact, literally, like some of them were really just lab guides. Like if you really boil it down, like Carl Stallhood, for example, his blog really was just to kind of like document better than Citrix was at the time how to install it. But the notion was, here you go, Mr. Sales Engineer. Here's actually how to install this, and others can do it too. But a lot of times people started misinterpreting that as this is the way to do it, and that was never really the intent. I don't think. At least I hope not, because honestly, I spent a lot of my career trying to correct those notions of this is a way, not the way. And if you want to go into production with this, this is not the way. A lot of times, and that got better over time. Honestly, it's a shame that that's not still going on, but yeah, it is what it is. But at the time, Citrix Education was kind of like a closed door. It's not like it is today. In fact, I don't think most people even realize now that there is pretty much all the Citrix education is available to you if you're a customer. It's there. That's one of the things with the change to the licensing and all that kind of stuff that's made that available. So it's there. And so when it comes to education, that was not really I feel it was a challenge then. It's probably not a challenge now, but I'll get into that in a second. I think maybe, but the Dirty Dozen, the way I did that was instead of just using what I was seeing, what I did is I pulled together resources, and how I did this pre AI just kind of blows my mind when I think about it. The hours and hours and hours I spent doing this. I took all this the risks and recommendations spreadsheets from Citrix Consulting because I had access to it at that time. So from um, I will be honest, I'm not even sure how many customers that actually was. I think at its peak, it was somewhere around 300 that I was parsing and basically just saying, okay, this recommendation is basically this. Let's count that. And so the top 12 were what I did in that presentation, the Dirty Dozen. And so um, I wonder if I probably have a copy of this somewhere. This would be fascinating if I can find this. Um, that actually would be fascinating now that I'm thinking about it. Now I'm like gonna become obsessed with like finding this. I'm gonna search through my OneDrive. Uh, Dirty Dozen. I know one of the things that I did was an update in 2022. I'd done a Dirty Dozen update, I guess you could say, for Citrix User Group. But yeah. But and then I did actually now I'm thinking about this. I have done a lot of different editions of this because there was like a work from home edition that was let me just out of more curiosity. This is 2020 and I think I did like a um looking at some of the findings specific to that. But then there was actually some things that were changing and so there were some updates to that. I wonder if I bet you I could here. Yeah, I totally could. All right, how do I do this? I haven't used this streaming software in so long. Yeah. So this was the presentation, and so what did I have here? So you go through and do all the things, all the fancy animations, whatever. Um, but trying to get to the index here. Yeah. So basically, it was like all the things that were that I was seeing wrong in all these spreadsheets was what I put in the recommendations, like uh, profile management not being configured right, and GPOs not processing right, and things like that. Um, at back then, I was still seeing people using login scripts, and spoiler alert, I still see people using freaking login scripts to map drives and things like that. I was like, what year is it? Uh, and so things like this were like really big deals that were getting missed completely. And so initially I was like, okay, well, I could just probably just write a blog about this. But honestly, I think what I wanted people to have was something that they could have in their hand and be able to just hold on to that. And so um, how do I swap that back? Woohoo. Wow. You don't use this in long enough and they change things around on you. There you go. So there was all these things that were like huge amounts of recommendations that were becoming too big to even have in a presentation. And so I was like, well, okay, well, let's find another way, find something else that will work better. And so I decided to just write them down in a book, and that's what ended up coming. But I didn't know how to do a book. I didn't know how to do this right. So what I ended up doing first was actually a PDF. Ooh, I bet you if I try, I could find this. I bet you. I bet you. Um, because I'm a pack rat. I don't throw things away. Um, and am I gonna find? Ooh, yeah. I think I just found the Dirty Dozen that I did for World of not World of UC. Keep want to say Pub Forum, but it wasn't Pub Forum. um, yeah, look at me stumbling all over this. Where is it? Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's pretty much. Let me figure out how to do this here. Live math. If I in slideshow, and then I can show you that the this guy here was the 2018 presentation, and so this was what I gave at that, and so it was the Experts Exchange. Why am I just blanking on the name here? But yeah, so there's all these things, but the original version of this was weird. Like the I didn't know enough about PowerPoint at the time, and so it was like advancing the timings on me automatically, and so it was just like kind of going along, and I didn't realize it behind me. But yeah, but this actually gives some context of the recommendations here. So it was like the 335, that was the number, 335 recommendations overall that I just like I compiled, and then looked at like details from about 10 different clients. And so um, yeah, it was a lot of data that I was putting together for this, obviously, but the things like 2018, what we had, it's just like a same kind of things, right? It was like things didn't really change much. Just to give an example. But what ended up happening was, and let me go back to this. I'm gonna close this out and actually see if I can find the actual PDF that I was giving out. Do-do-do-do. But the concept became pretty quickly, what do I do? Or the Citrix Hero concept emerged at some point. I actually don't remember exactly when that occurred to me to do that. But in 2018, there was like this top three. Uh, say a quick little PDF. And what I was doing here is I was saying, okay, is this something that's interesting for people? Is this something to be interested in? And there we go. And so yeah, it looked like this. And so it was just literally a PDF. I think this was even before Canva and things like that. So I think I put this together in like Publisher or something something like that. Microsoft Publisher. But that was this guide. And so it was, a 25-page guide for three tips. And so it was a pretty cool thing. And so what I was developing at the time was a membership program. And the idea was that people could be a part of a membership and learn how to not only get their skills down with the Citrix, but also advance their career. And so that was the concept. So the book really focused in on the technical aspects of this, but there was these concepts of these success lanes that I was um, interested in pursuing with folks that were more of like here's how to advance your career or be where you want in your career, whether it be in understand, maintain, um, what I called at the time build or design. This is actually before I had completed the risk less methodology in the just do this book, and so yeah. But basically, um, you got to see some differences there. But the concept is: are you somebody who is looking at what should be there? Are you looking at what is already there? Are you looking at building what is gonna be there? Or are you the person that's going to be, designing, for it, once a solution has been, determined? And so it's just like you're various levels of career in there. But what I was finding was that there's no real, as far as like things like earning, there was no distinctions necessarily. There was always like a higher up you could go within those lanes. And so really it's just like all that's why I called them lanes. It's like this is all the same highway. It's just what lane are you in right now? Are you in that, kind of engineering mode? Are you an engineer that builds this out? Are you administrating, that sort of thing? And so there's always like roles that like went with that. And so the membership was a concept of, hey, let's figure out what's best for you and get there. Well, the problem is twofold, really. One was like one, I didn't really have like all that much exposure out in the marketplace, and it was a lot of work. I put in a ton of work trying to get this membership up and running, and maybe had, I'm not even sure how many people we had, um, but even the people we had weren't all that really heavily engaged. But it quickly became apparent that it wasn't going to work out the way I was hoping it would, and so a lot of the concepts in that beta became video courses that I did, and then I said, "Well, we're going to shut this down and just move on." But then I had all this material, all these courses that I'd already made, and so I'm like, "Well, why don't we just put those into a book and give it to people?" Since I already kind of had done this PDF, and then this was really popular. I'm in several. Gosh, I actually don't know how many people downloaded this. As far as like this PDF guide or whatever. I think it was more than 1,000. It was quite a few people that had downloaded this, and so yeah, it was just a bunch of quick tuning things, and so a lot of this actually became the format for the book. And so I took all this and uh, put it into Word, Microsoft Word, and kind of just took the transcripts from the course and kind of merged these two together and expanded it, and that's what became the Be a Citrix Hero book. And so yeah, that's the story there. But yeah, it's kind of hilarious that a lot of the stuff was there in 2018, and this is like the roast part. This is like this is from 2018, and I was still putting it in my book in 2020. And when you go out and buy it today, it's just like it's still there. And so like, oh gosh. And so I don't know if it's possible to do like a side by side of the two documents. Is that something you can do in Adobe? I don't even know. Like a compare, but this is the latest of the text. That's this. And so what this basically, I'm trying to remember yeah, so it was like the was literally the first 3 chapters were the top 3. Um, Now what I'll say about that is that the book, you notice I didn't do top. I just did like individual chapters instead, because honestly, in hindsight, as things went along, I wasn't really sure that those were actually the top things. But there were some other things that I wanted to include as well, and as time got kept going on, there's a lot of things about the book that I wanted to include that I wasn't able to, or just you know um, didn't really feel it was necessary. So in 2019, I finished writing the book and had a kind of a beta readers group formed, and it was a lot of the folks that were in that membership, and a few. Chris, I think you were in that, right? I think, but yeah, there's a lot of folks that were part of that and gave me feedback, and we basically just um, crowdsourced the editing of that book. And so it was great. And so if you see in the very back of the book, actually, I wonder if I can just do like a link, or did I have to take that out? There was a version of this that I had to. remove the names of all the people that were the beta readers because Amazon was uh, had some sort of concern about that, and they were dinging me on that. So I think this version I might have already taken those. I might have taken those out already. So unfortunately, yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, that was interesting. But um, now I'm like, how do I get back to the top? Yeah, whatever. Uh, it's probably not important. So the thing with that whole story with the beta readers was like, okay, the idea was at the time to just release it as a Kindle, and so I did that. Um, and I probably have written down somewhere exactly when that was. I think it was like February or something like that. So I released it on Kindle. Everything was great, and then I think somebody literally asked me, "DJ, are you going to do this as an actual, book? That we can hold in our hands? Is this something we can have?" And yeah, and so it's like, yeah, I think that's possible. Truth is, my notion of this book was always to make this kind of a practice run for the next, and that's the great thing about this is that it was a practice run for the next. Now here's a fun fact for you. Based on overall actual sales, like not what I've given away, but sales of the book on Amazon and all these places like that. um, Be a Citrix Hero, I think last time I looked, it was outselling Just Do This, um, something like 3 to 1. It's crazy. It was like, okay, well, it's kind of what are we doing here? The reason is a laughable thing for me is that I actually put money into the Just Do This book. I hired a designer. I mean, this was like in like I can't remember if it was. I don't think it was Canva. I think it was like a different program at the time. But I just did this. I didn't like hire this out. It's not professional at all. It's just like a professional wouldn't do it like this. It's like so not professional the way I did this, but and we made it work. So um, the hilarious thing about all that is hiring an editor for the other book and all the things that were those were processes that were already in play. So I had already hired the editor for Just Do This when I was going through the process of being publishing Be a Citrix Hero. And so they ended up kind of colliding a little bit as far as like the times I was doing it. And so the course I was going through at the time, the guidance, the mentors that I had were basically advising me against doing it that way. But I was like, you know what? I've already got the momentum. I'm just going to keep going forward. It's just like I I kind of knew that the way I was taking things was a different direction. I really wanted to focus in on more of the career aspect of things. I wanted to focus in on, okay, so you have this knowledge. What do you do with it now? And that was something that the Be a Citrix Hero book, even though it kind of teased at it, like I think I was saying this a few days ago, the notion was that let's see, like maybe 5 here. Yeah. So the success lanes was still in here. And where appropriate, all including pre-risk and knowledge and the things for this understand, maintain, build, and design um, lanes. I didn't really touch in the book, but I've come to realize that those were some of the most valuable pieces. Like, okay, so you have some knowledge. Now what? What are you going to do with this long term? I mean, this was something I meant for people to have for a long term. I didn't want this to be you know, like a PDF where you just kind of read it once and forget it's there. I wanted this to be something you could reference. But um, the the thing was, I didn't really lean into that because I had other things going on, other priorities, and so um, that was going on. And then we launched the Thrive IT YouTube channel, and it seems like just everything died at that point. Where I just kind of like said, "Well, okay, this is the new direction. We're just going to head this way." And I'll be honest, kind of left the um, blog and Citrix Hero stuff just kind of to just fend for itself. And And I've come to realize recently is like it did fend for itself. It's still something that people are wanting. In fact, wanting in some cases more desperately now because there's not a lot of voices left. There's not a lot of people that are doing more than just your occasional, like, you happen to find it on the internet blog thing. There's no like, here's how to use this in a way that works. Here's how to, you know, take the knowledge that you have of what this does, or how to install it. Which no shade on the Citrix education people, but honestly, they don't really do that good of a job of like helping you understand why to do things. They just tell you what you can do basically. And so they don't really do a good job of like saying, okay, if you have um, problems with profile management and you want to use a full container, which is, in my opinion, a pretty good idea most of the time, you have to be aware that there's certain constraints with that, and you have to be aware of how it scales, and there's all these things that go into that part of the solution that don't always get talked about, because they're, as a vendor, it's just like, well, it's outside of their realm, right? They don't. I say they don't care, but it's one of those things where it's like they can't really educate on like all the aspects of everything. Of course not. They're developing courses for material that's already been moved on from. Frankly, it's just like, okay, well, if you're developing a full course for the technology, it's going to be obsolete in 3 months. Think about it. That's how often they're releasing new versions at this point. And so with things like the profile management piece, yeah, we might have an update that solves these problems, and all these kind of things that happen. And so it really becomes more about the overall philosophy of of how to do things. And so I'm going to reveal something right now, that I'll just tell you that one of the things that I want to figure out how to get into your hands is how I think. And this has been really tough to try and talk about, to try and write, because when I'm in the moment, I just naturally do it, and I don't really. It's hard for me to take the time to go back and say, okay, now what was my thought process there? How did I reach these conclusions and things like that? But when it comes to, and I mentioned profile management, for example, there's an idea of what are my constraints. I have this thing I want to do. What will constrain me against that? So if I like want to have profile containers for my entire organization, all my Citrix VDAs, okay, what's that gonna require? It's obviously going to be a lot more space, right? And so it's going to be something where we're going to have to look at that from a perspective of, okay, it's not just about the fact that my logons will be better and I'll have all this, better performance and blah blah blah. It's not about what. Now it's about the things that are implied by that. And I don't see a lot of guidance on this kind of stuff. Like, okay, you have to make sure that you have the storage allocated. You have to make sure that the storage you're actually using is appropriate for those kind of workloads. It's amazing how often see people just like have everything just on a single server and they're serving it up to like 2, 3,000 users. And it's just like, well, you wonder why they're miserable. You didn't design this for this. And so little things like that, you have a constraint of what that server will allow. Or sometimes in a lot of cases early in it's not as much issue these days, honestly, but back in the day, it was like, yeah, you are really constrained in the amount of space you could actually allocate to this, especially anything that was going to be fast enough to actually serve profiles. And so it became one of those things you had to think about. So there's a lot of things like that, philosophy wise, that I really wish were in the Be a Citrix Hero book, because that's what, to me, a Citrix hero is. I'm sitting here like pressing on the book like you can see me. It's like, that's what a Citrix hero is. Uh, but the weird thing about this is that it's just so hard to get articulated. And so what I'm going to want to do is kind of a combination of things. One is the getting some of these kind of things in the book, but honestly, a lot of it is really more of just getting it out into kind of a video like format, that sort of thing, where you'd have the opportunity to interact with me more often about that. And so that's why I've started talking about this. And some of you have actually already reached out to me on this, is a concept of mentoring. And so um, that is something I'm going to be starting to have more and more conversations about how can we do this. But the notion is like, this is knowledge. And in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be talking about this at the um, World of EUC gathering. And that is that when it comes to knowledge, anything you know, if your job relies on what you know, and that's really about it, in my opinion, AI is coming for that. That's an easy win for AI, is to have the knowledge. It really becomes about the application of this. And I think that we as technology professionals need to be cognizant of that and say, we need to be proactive. We don't want to just be caught behind on this. And so really it becomes about saying, okay, well, how can we do this better? How can we get prepared? How can we get to that point where, um, I'll give you an example here. One of these things right here, this maintain lane, this is absolutely where AI is coming. That's the biggest one right there. Is if it has to do with any kind of things that can be automated, are repetitious, or require a lookup of knowledge, that is maintain that lane. And that is, it's kind of scary because that's where most people start with UC. They start in that kind of, whether it's a service desk role or systems administration, that sort of thing. That's where Citrix usually gets introduced to them for the first time. And so I personally am very, very concerned about this, because now we're going to be seeing basically an assumption that you're going to be leapfrogging. And so I think that's fine, but we need to get there more rapidly. And so that ability to, I hate to say implement what you don't know, but have the level of confidence that you can think not like a machine, but using what becomes like what feels like instinct to you. A lot of the when I'm troubleshooting is one thing, but when I'm out doing a design for a customer, when I'm actually going out and saying, okay, here's the things you want, here's our success criteria, here is what we have to work with, and here are our constraints. I don't say those things out loud. I don't think about those things. They feel like I just know them, or I know to go to that. It's like a habit that gets formed. So one of the things that I'm really been wondering about is, how do we make that real for this, when, especially when you don't necessarily always start out with the practice of being in administration, and when that's not necessarily always going to be a thing. So I'm kind of thinking like 3-4 years ahead here, but at the same time, I think that application of knowledge and not just resting on our laurels is going to become really critical. And so that's why I don't necessarily say, you know, have a good Citrix career. That's why I say be a Citrix hero, is because we really need to be folks that are willing to learn, adapt, make sacrifices, and be better as people. We need to have that mindset, or we'll just rest on our knowledge. And if we rest on our knowledge, I think that's going to be a a risk area for your career. I think, and I haven't gone through the survey in detail, because it doesn't necessarily cover. It's not specific to USAG technologies, but um, I I have a theory that we've reached a um, kind of a peak. Like you have the level of income that was kind of gotten to, and I'll be honest, a lot of this kind of caught me by surprise. Me as an independent consultant and doing all these things for all these years and thinking I was doing well. Um, mm-mm, no, now you have 25-year-olds that are doing twice my income at this point and have none of the knowledge that I have. And this is what I'm getting at. So you have this like ceiling of like, here's what you can make as a Citrix architect, for example. Maybe it's like um, between 120 and 180,000 is the range I was seeing. But I think what we're seeing with the other roles, below that, you know, kind of peaking at around. Um, I forgot to close Outlook. That's lovely. Um, those things are peaking a bit, and so you're seeing more and more encroachment and more consolidation of those roles, which means that in aggregate earning less. Now, individual roles might actually keep increasing in compensation, but there's going to be less of them. And so what that's going to do is force us into what I believe are two areas. One is this obviously the engineering thing. I don't think this is going away anytime soon. I think the the automations and things like that have been uh, a running joke. It doesn't work. The thought of automating systems to deploy, uh, it may work with like a web page. It may work with like a standalone like Docker based environment or whatever. Those things that are completely isolated. Citrix isn't like that. There's and I would say that Citrix handles challenges that others can't. And so Citrix really becomes more challenged in handling things that are just way too complex. And so the idea of completely automating a Citrix install for anything other than a demonstration or like a proof of concept environment is laughable. I just it's just not realistic. So many people are on legacy applications and all these kind of things that are going on. It is amazing to me, how often people think about this in terms of like, well, you just install it. It's so easy to install now. It's like, yes, it is easy to install now, and I think that that part of it has become a lot easier. The automations we have. I'll be honest with you, Citrix Cloud. I'm a pretty big fan these days. I was resistant for a long time. In fact, the whole notion with this book that I was thinking about, and I may still do it, but what I want to do is have a second, like I'm literally going to call it Citrix Hero to the clouds, the number two. Yeah. So it'd be Citrix Hero 2, but it would just be focused on cloud technologies. My problem with that, and the reason I've hesitated on that, is like it's too much of a moving target. How you possibly going to be how are you going to make that work long term? I'd have to be constantly updating the book, and it's just like not really attractive. I just don't have that kind of my brain doesn't work well enough to do that all the time, which is what you'd have to do. But the core concepts are always there, right? So you always have those kind of things. So those they might get easier and quicker to deploy, or you might have to deploy less individual technologies. But even with Citrix Cloud going, whether it's to another like Azure or whatever, there's always little gotchas. But on prem, you still got those gotchas. You're just doing less of it. And yeah, I've got to say they've really improved in Citrix Cloud. They definitely have. You know what? I just realized I thought this whole time I was showing this little QR code up here. Um, let me finish this thought and I'll talk about that code in a second. But um, things have improved, but it's not like this is going away because of that. It just maybe got a little faster, but the needs are still there. And honestly, I got myself into a little bit of a pickle recently with um, very much underestimating the number of hours I thought I was going to take because of a Citrix Cloud. It was going to be Citrix Cloud, and so I was like, "Well, I don't have to do any infrastructure. I'll just knock a bunch of time off of it." Well, I shouldn't have done that. It turns out that was not appropriate. Um, but I think the two areas that are going to be most important for for growth, as far as like what you should be getting towards, even though this is not necessarily comfortable for everybody. I think when it comes to this being in administration, it's a lot easier to go into an area of. I think with administration, you go one of two areas. You either go into engineering because you're interested in the technology, or you go into management because you're interested in the people, and you just so that becomes your thing. And so management is a valid thing. This is what I want you to hear: is that when it comes to being a Citrix hero, that it's a portable skill set. These mindsets, these things you're learning, they're all portable, and not just for the technology. You find you can apply them in multiple things, and I have definitely found this to be true in my professional life. That everything I learned doing Citrix, not everything, but a lot of the other skills, the soft skills, I guess you could say. The soft skills become the hard skills. They become what sticks with you. I hate that they call them soft skills at this point because it's like those are the things that have actually mattered. My getting good at documentation was what led to me writing books. My getting good at presenting the notion of um, here's what you need to do in your environment. Like here's the design. Those kind of things led to me doing exactly things like this. And so this has all been a progression, but it's all because of that technology. What working in that enabled me to do later. It's kind of cool. And so when it comes to things like your your career, this is kind of where the I I still have the original course up there. And honestly, I think, I'm probably gonna be raising I intended to raise the price, and I just I'll be honest with you, I forgot. I forgot to raise it, because I wasn't really pushing it at all, I wasn't really saying anything about it, but, at the same time, I'm like, there's a lot of stuff that's there that's not in the book. A lot of stuff, actually, that's not in the book. There's an entire, my what I call the turbo tuning framework, which is basically a notion of, okay, well, let's focus on the most important things first, and do the things that are actually going to have the highest return when we were actually doing things like tuning a Citrix environment, and this sort of thing. And so it's really much more along this area. Some of that kind of flows into that maintain kind of lane, I guess you could say, or the area. But it was really kind of more for Citrix engineers to understand. Okay, well, here's some things you can do to kind of fine tune this environment better and better. Things like running the Citrix optimizer. What is the cost of that? Nothing. How long does it take to do? Huh. These are things that used to take me like an entire day to get done, and now it's done in like 5 minutes. If you use the .NET optimization, if you don't use that, then it's done in like a minute. And these are all like tons of things that we used to just have to go in and click, and for Martin said, hey, why don't we just put this into a script with a GUI? And we're like, gosh, Martin, that's a great idea. Uh, why didn't I think of that? um, but the idea with that turbo tuning framework was something I wanted to have in the book. Um, I just I honestly I couldn't figure it out, like how to get it in there fast enough, and so it just didn't make it. Um, but things like that are in the course today. What I want to do going forward, though, is a pretty massive upgrade of that course. So we're including not only the technical, but also what I was talking about the um, here's how I think about things. And so I'm looking at some various ways to do that, and this might end up being the the first thing that I end up kind of like vibe coding, I guess you could say, is how to get that more interactive. But that's just it is a huge challenge. It really is, especially when it comes to technical things. Now, when it comes to like guiding people on a process of design and things like that, really what we're talking about here is much more of this plan phase, which is more of that architect kind of lane. But the thing about that is, like, if you are just in systems administration, jumping to that one is pretty much impossible, because this requires a lot of the technical knowledge and experience and instincts. But also, I'll be honest, man, being a Citrix architect has been challenging as from an interpersonal standpoint. And so I've come to realize that there's a lot of politics you have to deal with. You're you're dealing with other teams that have their own agendas and things like that and all the concerns. And it can be a real challenge to balance that. And so it becomes kind of one of those things where it's just like, yeah, okay, we have to be part of that. But also, the other part about this is this initial step with the methodology, which is understand, really getting a grasp of what the challenges actually are, having the notion of going out and, well, let me give you an example. So, trying to do this stuff remotely as a contractor has been increasingly challenging. And recently, I had an experience where it was a hospital system, a very distributed one, and they were wanting me to come in and replace a certain other EUC technology that we won't name by name, but maybe you'll catch a view of what I mean. Anyway, they were having some pretty specific challenges, and it was not working to optimize. And so, we they decided to go with Citrix across the board. They already had it for some of their medical stuff, so they said VDI as well, all that kind of stuff. And so we said, great, okay, we'll get this all designed, and everything was good. And had a lot of conversations with the IT staff and things like that, and really thought we had a grasp on everything. And then it came to actually deploy it, and we're kind of in a pause on a lot of this because we're like, well, okay, there's some concerns that are not working out like we thought they were. Even in the testing, that didn't come out. Which, if you've read the other book, you know exactly what I'm going to say here. Is like there's a notion of people won't remember when you went live; they'll remember how you went live. And so I'm like, well, let's pull back a little bit. But had I actually been there on site, had I been allowed to view what the users were actually doing and how they were working, I could have saved a lot of hours and a lot of effort, a lot of kind of pain. But that's where this understand notion comes in. And honestly, this is not the default. In fact, a lot of times I have to actually fight to to get the people that I'm serving to say to agree to let me do that. I've literally so many times in my career encountered people that are like, or managers or whatever, like, oh, we don't want, I don't know. You're a Citrix consultant. We don't want you in front of the people. No, 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 no. That's not good. Okay. So I don't know how you expect to actually get a good idea about, how things are actually going. If I can't do this, so you're introducing risk by not seeing it. So that's then the challenge of doing this remotely. But at the same time, there's some things about that I I think I can teach better by verbal and visual example than I can in a book. And so that's why a course seems to make a lot of sense for that. But the other piece of that I'm looking at is, how can I be more of a mentor relationship? And so the question I've been asking, and honestly, this is something for y'all to think about and start getting me feedback on, is it practical for companies to basically sponsor me mentoring you? So it wouldn't be just a course at that point. I mean, the course would be a component, but this would be like something on top of the course where there's actual mentorship relationship there, where, guiding you through not just the technical, but also the other aspects of this, like the communication skills, like learning how to lead. Like, so many of you have been forced into a team leadership position, and it's like your company doesn't have anything for you. Like, there's no enablement. And it's just like, so they expect you to lead, but they don't tell you how to lead. kind of crap is that? But it's happening across the board, especially in technology. So it's one of those things where it's just like there's things that the management gets frustrated about that. You end up with like more technical debt, or the person that's leading, or the architect or whatever, ends up taking on way more work than they should. Like they end up doing almost everything themselves because they don't know how to transfer that to someone else, or they're not being equipped to know how to do that, or to see that they need to. Um, and so that's part of this is saying, okay, well, if we can identify a pain point at the company, then I think it's much more likely that we can actually do that. Because, I mean, honestly, there's no way I could possibly just have like oh yeah, here's a $199 course, and I'll be your mentor for a year. Yeah, that's just never going to work. Not It's just not going to work. And so I'm looking into options with that, but at the same time, you know, I want to be sensitive to the fact that not a lot of people are able to afford that, or their company may not help them, but they still need it. And so I'm looking into ways to kind of have a scholarship program for more people with that too. And the idea here is to start with Citrix and then expand out towards, other aspects of your career and needs, like leadership I mentioned. So this would have some aspects of that, but there'd be a deeper level to go to with that as well. But this is kind of like where I figure starting is the best thing to do. And so that's really where I'm at. So all that to say, with the course platform, the idea is to start expanding that. And so obviously that entails, well, just with inflation, I should have raised the price 3 years ago. Four, I guess, whatever. Lost count of years. But honestly, adding value into that. So what I'll say really quick, if you're in the Citrix Hero community that is on Mighty Networks, you've already heard me say this, but my notion is that everyone who's currently in the course will be grandfathered in. And so when I raise the price, that'll be the price for new people. But the people that are already there will get grandfathered in. So that's kind of I just want to do that. I don't know if that's going to be perceived as not fair or whatever. It's just like, yeah, it doesn't matter in the long run. But what I want to do is seriously update the course materials themselves so that they're a little bit more digestible. I've learned a lot since I put those together. And so there's a lot we can do to make this more of like a tracking your progress, making it so that you can just take the things you need when you need them and not have to worry about consuming them all in order to be getting value out of it. And so that's where I'm at with that. And my notion right now is, yes, I'm going to start working on the book. In fact, there are some things that I've already thought about doing. Ooh, yeah. So I will actually, you know what? We're in roast mode, right? We're roasting the book. I'm literally going to show you my OneNote. This is what I have so far. The confidential on screen. I don't think so. I mean, you'll see some headers and whatnot, but whatever. Not the end of the world. But there's some things that I know I want to either take out or kind of present differently in the book itself. And there's a whole like chapter on the methodology and this sort of thing that was clear at the end. And the more I've come to realize it, it's like that I kind of introduced the topic at the front of the book, but I need to integrate that a lot better into the actual lessons. And so that's what I was going to do. But there's all these things that I'm wanting to add. So one is just I want to make a preface that's all about being in a post-pandemic world with Citrix and remembering when you're all on premises. So this is I was doing some setup for the YouTube channel, and there's a list of banned words in the comments, and I haven't enacted this yet, or maybe I didn't, I just forgot. But if you type premise instead of premises, I'm probably going to ban that. Make it so that you can't actually post your comment if you make that mistake. It's premises. A premise is a thought. A premises is a place. All right. So I get so frustrated with that one. That's one of those that drives my. I'm a on the disc scale. I'm a very much a C in that regards. It drives me nuts to have that inaccurate. But so when we are all on premises, um, and then adding a chapter on evaluating cloud versus on premises or on prem, if you like. Um, Taking out the NetScaler stuff. I think maybe just making it a training for online only. I don't think it really is relevant as much as it was, especially these days with most people going to using Cloud Gateway instead. And so that's been my kind of go-to for a while now. It's like if you can, you should. It's just like it's been so much easier in a lot of regards. And I know I get like back and forth on that, but the honest truth is, I'm not necessarily training you to be like the Citrix expert here. I want to train people on how to be just have that in your cap, like be the hero, go move on. So make it easy. But the antivirus guidance is not really strong in the book, and I think I want to make that into very much a okay. Here's some considerations with all that you need to be to be aware of. I don't think we're living in the world much anymore where the VDAs don't have any antivirus at all, but every now and then I am seeing it, and that's just a really not good idea. So things like that. Um, I mentioned profile management. That is one of those things where it's just like in hindsight, I'm like, how if that was a top finding in the Dirty Dozen, why is that not its own chapter in the book? I think it gets a quick little reference, but that's it. And so definitely want to make that a thing. I mentioned this as the methodology of good Citrix design. Now, I will tell you that I have this as an offering that nobody really took me up on, and so I'm back and forth on if I include all of what I'm talking about because there's a $5,000 course out there that I think maybe 3 people will have access to when I finish it. Um, that I'm back and forth on whether to include that. The if the whole thing was in a book, it'd make it a very big book, but the notion of if that's going to be in the course platform or not, I don't know yet. We'll see. Um, yeah, I'll just say that I'm looking into some options with that as far as like having some sponsors and whatnot for the course and things like that, and if they can offset some of the cost, that I can just get it to you. I'd be willing to do that, but um, the PVS stuff, I think I'm just going to make that more of a bonus. It's just been I'm seeing it less and less in the field, and the more I thought about it, it's like one of those things where it's just like that whole like quick wins, be a Citrix hero thing. It's really, eh, eh, it's not as important. Most people are not deploying PVS unless they really know what they're doing, and so machine creation services has got much better. And so it's to the point where depending on your storage, of course, and your other aspects of this, like if you're running Nutanix, then it's a no-brainer. It's like you need to be running machine creation services. What are you doing with your life? Uh, but there's a lot of things like that. But also that whole whether it should be non-persistent or persistent. I'm seeing a lot of the remote PC still out there in the field. When COVID happened, a lot of people saw Citrix as just remote PC. I wish I was kidding, but it's absolutely true that now 6 years later, I'm still encountering people that only think in terms of like persistent desktops or persistent VMs because there was just like this notion of let's get it done quick and kind of that quick and dirty kind of a thing to where yeah, that was done and never really fixed. And so you just have that notion of some really inefficient and badly run virtual environments or physical and virtual hybrid environments that are just like, what are you even paying for? So a lot of trying to figure out how to include some thoughts about that, about how to move forward and get people into a better situation with that sort of thing. But um, yeah, there's a lot of swap that. Yeah, there's a lot of fallacies around. I I've been at this for so long that it actually does irk me when people, wow, like, I can't even get it out. When I hear customers or people saying like, "Oh, yeah, published applications, Citrix can do that?" Ugh. Yeah. I literally hear these things now. It's out in the field. This is like they think it's like apples to apples with the other VDI technologies, and it's just not. It's just not. And Citrix has done virtually nothing to combat this, which I find utterly laughable, obviously. But there's a lot of just really bad perceptions about what the technology can actually do and how it actually compares. It's become just a checkbox on a Gartner um, matrix, and it's just laughable how how different they actually are when you really boil it down, and then the actual benefits. It's yeah. I'm getting out. I'm soapboxing, but that's one of the reasons why I stick with this stuff, guys. Is this like, yeah, it's not that the technology is bad. You know, I have some pretty serious problems with the way the company is in a lot of aspects right now, but the technology is still great. So I still want you to win with this. Um, I do want to talk about MFA, FAS. And now it's emerging with using Entra ID directly with hybrid joined devices. I'm getting into the weeds here, but the NetScaler chapter, like I said, is kind of like, it just needs to go away. But multi-factor authentication and single sign-on is absolutely something we should be talking about. But here's the thing, and I want to highlight this. Um, One of the reasons why I want to do the course first and then the book next is I want to be able to feature your stories. I want to be able to say, okay, um, and the funny thing is, oh, oops, what did I do to myself here? I disappeared. The thing is with this that there's a few stories that are in the book, and in talking with a lot of you, that's what I heard that you really enjoyed, was that it wasn't just, here's the technology and here's how it works. It was me telling a story about it and giving my experiences. Like, hands down, that's what I heard more than anything. It was like, yeah, we felt like we could do it because you had done it, kind of thing. It wasn't just like a, here's what to do, and if you don't do this, you're stupid. I would never say that, obviously, but I want to. I love that. But what I want to do, hello, Loki. I would like to have this to where your stories are in there as well. And so what I'm going to be doing is, the people that are in the course program, I'm going to be asking for stories. The people that are in the community, I'm going to be asking for stories, and I want to get those out there. So yeah, that's what's coming up. I am exhausted, running late, all that kind of stuff. It's been great to be with you. Um, oh, a couple things that I want to do too, just really quickly. Um, I haven't gotten to I need to film this for the little short that I'm doing this afternoon, but um, the workspace environment management. It's funny because after all this time, it's still one of the biggest things when you're using, well, even just with like just the performance optimizations, but some of the solutions that I've been able to come up with that are enabled by workspace environment management, that are just like managing applications on the desktop, managing printers, based on a context. These are all just so much easier with workspace environment management. And so I kind of want to do the same kind of thing with the guidance. It's now become a lot easier. You don't have to have an infrastructure to deploy the performance stuff that's in there. You can just do it through Active Directory now, which is awesome. But there's also literally some recommendations that I made in the book that I don't recommend anymore. That's one thing I will do on update. Using a memory optimization. You need to be careful with that. You need to take a look at your infrastructure and make sure you're actually able to handle memory optimization. It could actually really harm your performance depending on what your use case is. Um, anyway, that's an aside. But also just having some additional guidance on the capabilities that you should be looking for. And I say that because honestly, with a lot of this, the technology moves faster than I ever could. There's no way that I could make a course that is going to be updated from a technology standpoint. So what I'm wanting to do with this is to say, okay, when you have a challenge, look in these places for a solution because you're probably not the only person that's had that challenge. In fact, very rarely are you the only person that it's totally why when you go look for a solution, what do you look at? You look at Google, and a lot of you are using like AI tools right now, which actually makes this little pain pop in my neck here. Um, but we've used Google. You know, my Google foo is strong. This is what I made a career out of this. I made a career out of Google searches, and I'm not even kidding with you. But it's because a lot of the challenges you have, someone else has faced and has been kind enough to document. Uh, and so a lot of that is really more a matter of, again, the knowledge becomes out there. And that's what is good about like World of EUC and things like that, about putting the knowledge out there. What it's not good at is storing that knowledge. And I, yeah, yeah, I don't have a voice at that table, so I don't really have the ability to say anything about it. But that's really where I'm seeing a challenge is like the people that know aren't writing it down anymore. So that's going to be something that does become a challenge. But at the same time, um, that will improve. That like they say all the time with AI, this is the worst. It's currently the worst it's ever been, or as worst it'll ever be. Those kind of things. I don't know if I believe that per se, but when it comes to knowledge kind of things, or troubleshooting, these are the kind of things that I think AI is going to accelerate for us and make it so that it's going to be easier for us to take on these other roles. And so, I really want to start equipping people for that. And in closing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, uh, well, I'm just going to say I'm sorry. And this is a weird thing to say, but um, I yeah, there's a time where I was like, "This is just not going anywhere. I don't like it anymore, and I need to just go another direction and just get out of this." And that's what I did. I left the Citrix Hero community behind in pursuing other things. And in looking back at that, it was a time of my life that was very tough. It wasn't just pandemic stuff. I mean, that was a factor, but there's a lot of things about this that really there's this book that's right behind me there, Drift to Drive by one of my mentors at Maxwell Leadership, named Chris Robinson. And this book has totally kind of rearranged some things in my head of realizing that a lot of what 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 came out of doing the book and all this kind of stuff was a notion of, is this it? thing. And 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 when there wasn't more, I kind of became depressed. And then 2023 happened, and Citrix decided to say, okay, well, we don't like anybody anymore. That's not literally what they said, but um, but they wanted to just make it so that the partners and independent people were responsible for handling things like community, handling things like um, well, to a level, support, even licensing, that sort of thing. It became one of those things where it's just like, we're just going to focus on this group, and everybody else you can focus on, with your partners and independent folks. And so there's this gap that was created, but I lost all my consulting income. And so I had this like, just like feet knocked out from under me kind of thing going on. And it just it's taken another 3 years for me to get to the point of saying, you know, I I, I don't want to leave you all behind. The what I thought about in 2016 is still very much valid today. And so when I was having these thoughts of like, okay, I want to be able to leave this world better than I found it, and I can get people equipped and find ways to do that that is actually, you know, going to be practical, and yeah, it's not just knowledge. And then we have application things like that. So it's it would just be about me just up finishing what I've already put out there. So we just do some tweaks, and then it's about moving forward. And so that's the journey we're going to be on. And it's terrifying for me to be back into this world, because as I've done this, I've realized some of the challenges that I had with it. That a lot of folks just know how to ask technology questions, and so they naturally think that this is just about the technology. Well, I'm working on getting better about the messaging, that saying, if you just want the technology, there's free stuff for that. There's free stuff for the knowledge. But if you want to actually apply this into growing a career and being um, feeling like you have a purpose in life, that's who I want to attract. Those are the people that are really going to be interested in the concept of being a Citrix hero, not just as a person that does Citrix in their day to day life. There's a difference, and so that's where we're going. And like I said, I do apologize publicly for just abandoning that notion, um, and going off to other things out of my own frustrations and burnout and trauma. But that's where we're at. Speaking of the trauma thing, I am still working on a book on this. It is still there. Um, but I'll be honest with you, there are just some in writing this fictional story about a person in the healthcare world that gets thrust into this position of having to deploy Citrix when he didn't know what it was, and all this kind of stuff. There's a lot of your journeys in this. There's a lot of my journey in this. It's our story, but it's been one of those things where I've realized that there's just so many just points of trauma in this. It's like I'll start writing it, and I have to stop myself because it's like I have to walk away for a while. I've had to walk away from this book, I think, 7 different times, just because it's become overwhelming. And so I'm just, working through some of that stuff, and so I know we'll be better on the other side of it, but, it is something I'm still working on, but, um, I wasn't originally intending to just get this finished this year, but, um, honestly, I think this is just a bigger thing. It's on my heart, and like I said, it's already 3/4 of the way there, y'all. It really just takes a little bit of updates and pushing through this and applying some things I've learned in like the marketing world and technology as far as like the uh, platforms that are out there and those sort of things. The capabilities we have now dwarf what we had 7 years ago. And so the notion is to say, okay, well, all the things that I really wanted to do, let's update that, give it a better direction, and go for it. And so that's what I'm doing. So that's it. That's not it, but that's it for today. So thanks for being on the journey, and I really appreciate you. I appreciate all you do out there in the world. So many stories. Oh my gosh, I didn't even get to share some of those. I wanted to today. I got to yapping. We'll have some other videos. We'll talk about this. I really do want to share your stories because some of the things you guys have said to me over the years has just been mind blowing. I've had people that have come up to me and said, "Hey, you know what? I applied for this other job because of your book, and I'm now doing this instead of what I was doing because of your book. I've had people say that, I didn't make a bad choice because of something you said in an email. Just little things like that. Just like, I was like, are you serious? Is this real? You know, um, folks I don't know face to face that are too shy to come up and see me. It's like I have this blessing of making all these impacts on people that really deserve it. You guys work in situations that are just utterly ridiculous. It's, I mean, especially this week, like being up from like 1 a.m. to 5 p.m. working straight through on stuff that, like, it ended up not even being a Citrix issue, but it's perceived that way, and you're not able to go until we can prove it out, that sort of thing. It's those kind of things are what we deal with, and we power through it, and we still maintain a notion of, you know what, we're here to make this a better place. So kudos to you, Citrix heroes. Love you guys. I appreciate you. So what I'll say is just be blessed. Be blessed by the best. Then go be a blessing to all the rest. That's what I say. Love you guys, and we'll see you next time. We'll do this more. If you want more of these, let me know. Put comments on videos, send me emails, text me on LinkedIn, whatever. Just let me know if you want more of this, and we'll do it. But for today, I'm going to go because I have a meeting in 2 minutes. All right. See you guys soon.